In this week's parasha, we have the plague of frogs, and everywhere the Egyptians looked, there were frogs, in the streets, in their homes, on their beds, even in the ovens. Millions of slimy frogs with bulging eyes jumping around and making a really raucous noise, and none of them, not a single one, turning into Prince Charming, or even Mr. Right Enough. Where did all these frogs come from? Did they descend on Egypt in swarms like the predators and the locusts of later plagues? Rabbi Akiva gives us an amazing explanation. And he says it all began with a single frog emerging from the river. The Egyptians screamed and hit it with a stick in an attempt to kill it, but to their shock, the frog split into two, the second replica of the first. And the Egyptians screamed again, ik, and then struck these two frogs, and they too split. The Egyptians flogged the frogs again and again, but all they accomplished was a rapid production of frogs that turned into an all-encompassing plague. The Egyptians are the ones who distributed all the frogs. They kept hitting the first one, and that is how the frogs spread through the land. Let's think about this. The Egyptians saw that when they struck the frog, it divided into more and more frogs. Why then did they continue hitting it? If when you strike the frog, it does not die, but rather divides into more frogs, wouldn't it be best not to do anything at all? Why did the Egyptians insist on hitting the frog? Couldn't they see that hitting the frogs was counterproductive, to say the least? The Stipler, Rabbi Yaakov Yisrael Kanievsky, responds, and he says, the Egyptians were angry. Since the frog continued to divide into more frogs, they felt that they had to keep hitting it in order to take revenge and to strike it as hard as possible. And the more frogs it replicated, the angrier they became. Their anger burned within them, and this kept on. They continued to strike and take vengeance, and it continued to duplicate into more and more frogs until the entire land was covered. The Egyptians didn't think it would help them to strike the frog. They were simply very angry, and they tried to punish the frog. The fact that they were the ones who were harmed by the punishment of the frog did not interest them at all. The main thing was to vent their anger, to strike out and to punish. If the Egyptians had remained calm, the plague of the frogs would not have been such a severe tragedy. 2, 4, 8, 16 frogs maybe, until they realized what was happening, and that would have been it. The ones who transformed it into a terrible plague were the Egyptians themselves. Says the Stipler, it is important to know that the frog did not remain in Egypt. Each and every one of us sometimes meets just a frog, and like in Egypt, the seriousness of the blow struck by the frog depends only on our reaction. We're living in times where there's a lot that can make us angry. I read an article by Alan Dershowitz, and he said, stop calling it a deal, call it for what it is, extortion. But if we can take that anger and channel it into something productive, turn the rage into outrage, take that energy and dive into Hashem. And if there's one thing that will make our enemies the victors, is if we become angry with each other. And so this week, we have the message of the frogs to remind us how destructive that can be. Good Shabbos.